Part 1, we met Scott Atwell, a man who just moved to Providence while getting his life back in order from events in his recent past. His long-distance girlfriend Erica is coming up for a visit on his birthday weekend. Providence has been beautiful and welcoming, but has also produced some odd strangers who seem to recognize him in ways that he cannot account for and has decided not to think about. Erica arrives on Friday with a birthday present that involves some family history she's being very mysterious about. Scott has plans. Sort of. What could go wrong? 2. Erica arrived on Friday afternoon with a small gift bag and way more luggage than one weekend would normally dictate. I took the bulk of it, naturally, navigating the narrow stairs of the 19th century house up to my floor in shifts while she followed behind with her purse and that gift bag. Gotta have options, she said, which was all the explanation I was going to get. I gave her the 2-cent tour, which didn't take long. She took in the living room with the diplomatic generosity of someone whose own apartment regularly looked like an estate sale in progress. It's cozy, she said, which I accepted graciously. Her eyes landed on the home bar taking shape in the corner, and her expression shifted to something a little more genuinely approving. Oh, now we're talking. Sazerac? Obviously. We settled in while I made the drinks, the familiar ritual of it feeling like something solid after a week of newness. When I handed her the glass, she took a sip, exhaled, and looked moderately less like someone who had just driven through Connecticut. After a while, she reached into the gift bag. Here, she said, producing a small box wrapped in black paper. Just put the last touches on it this morning. Underneath the wrapping was a wooden box containing a series of old photographs and a binder. The binder laid out a genealogy of my family lines. My father's traced all the way back to the 14th century Britain. The photographs correlated with ancestors in his line, some dating from the mid-1800s. It was an amazing deep dive that I could have spent hours poring over at that very moment, were it not for our plans for the evening. I really couldn't find any much on your mother's side, Erica said, though her tone was more animated than apologetic. She flipped through the binder to a nearly empty section. Which is honestly the more interesting problem. Your father's line was easy. Germans and British have left paper trails everywhere. But the name Zodkiv? Zodikiv? Zodikiv? She said the name like she's been turning it over for weeks. I couldn't find anything. No records, no origin, nothing until your great-grandfather shows up at Ellis Island in 1928. She found the page and turned it towards me. Then he settles in Constable Hook, New Jersey. Mom always said that he'd probably fled Stalin's purges, that they'd likely spelled the name wrong at immigration. That's the thing, though, Erica said, leaning forward slightly. I looked for phonetically similar Ukrainian names. There aren't any. Not even close. She paused, letting that sit. The name doesn't appear to exist before he walked off that boat. We were both quiet for a moment. Huh, I said, which was the best I had. I have one more lead I'm following up with, but I'm waiting on some information. I'll update the binder when I know more, maybe by Christmas? She nodded towards my phone. You should reinstall that 23andMe app in the meantime. The databases update constantly. New population data gets added all the time. It might resolve now? I sighed. I'd have to remember my password, I said. Besides, I probably just didn't swab properly. The fact said that could cause an inconclusive result. Erica gave me a look that said she did not think that was what had caused the inconclusive result, but she let it go. Just reinstall it, babe. I shrugged and found the app and hit install as she continued. Oh, and one more thing. Erica rummaged through one of her bags with the focused energy of someone who had packed for every conceivable occasion and knew exactly which bag it was in. She produced a Ziploc baggie of small, oddly shaped chocolate cubes and held them up next to her smile. No pressure, but, shrooms? I looked at the bag, I looked at her. I thought about the year that I had, and the years I had before that, the house fire, the general trajectory of my existence up to this particular Friday evening in Providence. Why the hell not? Yeah? It's my birthday, I said, as if that explained everything, which apparently it did. She grinned and tossed me the bag. A short while later, after working through the initial nausea that the chocolates announced themselves with, we headed out into the city. My legs felt lighter with every block, and my head settled into a mix of hyper-clarity and quiet euphoria. Erica walked beside me, drinking in everything. The buildings, the murals, the people, the whole city coming through the psilocybin like a signal finally turned to the right frequency. The atmosphere down city was festive. It was a beautiful spring day, and everyone was out for Cinco de Mayo. The shops had all their wares out for sale on the sidewalk, and the crowd was full of brightly clothed ongoers. Bands were playing on just about every corner, and the smell of a variety of foods wafted through the air. I was easily caught up in all the commotion until Erica grabbed my arm tightly. I turned to look as she was just staring around with wide, unblinking eyes, my arm in her clutching hands. Hey, you okay? I asked, guiding her to the steps of the beneficent Congregational Church to sit down. With large pupils, she slowly looked at me and responded with a very loud whisper. I think I underestimated the strength of these edibles. How are you feeling? Uh, Great body high, you? Overstimulated. I think I'd like to be away from all this for a little bit. Just a bit. She looked up at the church doors behind us, slowly whispering so the church didn't hear her. This church is breathing on me. Luckily, I knew just the spot to get away from everyone in the heart of Providence. In a very short time, we were sitting against the ancient tree in the cemetery of St. John's Cathedral, its branches reaching over us, around us, shading us and protecting us like an old grandmother's soul while we coasted through this high. The city noise fell away to almost nothing. I just enjoyed being with her, the quality of her company and the quiet, the way we didn't need to fill the silence with anything. Then her phone buzzed once. She read a message, and her expression shifted from something I couldn't quite read before to smoothing back out. Then it buzzed again and again. Everything all right? I asked without much urgency behind it. Yeah, she said, and put the phone face down on her knee. She looked up at the branches above us. Yeah, it's fine. I let it go. The tree was very old, and the light through the leaves was extraordinary, and it was my birthday. Some things could wait. The light through the branches began to change, the gold of late afternoon going amber, then deeper. Somewhere out beyond the cemetery walls, the city was still going. The last of the Cinco de Mayo crowd was winding down, the music fading. I was comfortable where I was, but I watched Erica, and when she shifted and looked around with clear eyes, I took it as a signal. You ready? Yeah, she said. I need to find a bathroom. There was a bar not too far away that obliged. I waited outside, watching the sky darken over the rooftops, the first suggestion of wood smoke finding me on the breeze. The braziers along the river were lighting. She came back quieter than she'd gone in. I put it down to the psilocybin settling, that soft deflation as it releases its hold. She smiled when she saw me, which was enough. We crossed towards the river and heard it before we saw it. The music had changed completely. Where the afternoon had been all brass and percussion and color, this was something else entirely, slow and dark and ancient feeling, neoclassical and haunting, carried over the water on speakers strung along the riverbanks. The braziers burned in a long chain down the center of the Providence River, their reflections pulling apart and reforming on the current. The crowd moved differently here, slower, drawn to the water like something instinctive. Wow, Erica said quietly. Yeah, I agreed. We walked along the river slowly, drawn by the fires and the music. The water seemed black at night, the kind of black that has depth to it, lit only by the shifting glow of the braziers above, bright against the dark, never settling. It was beautiful and slightly wrong in a way I couldn't articulate and decided not to try. I was watching the water when I saw it. A pale, fleshy shape moving slowly beneath the surface, large enough to displace the reflection above it. Well, my heart did something unpleasant. I blinked and it was gone, or deep enough to be invisible again. Erica, I said, did you see that? See what, babe? In the water, there was something, a shape, pale, pretty big. She looked at the river, then back at me with a slow smile. Weren't you just bragging earlier of not getting any visuals with the mushrooms? I know. I think it might have been a manatee or something. A manatee? She looked at me like I had just gotten off the short bus. Really? There was one in the river a few years back. It made the news. Scott, I'm just saying it's not impossible. She looked at me for a moment with the patience of someone who had just eaten the same mushrooms and was not currently seeing manatees. Okay, babe, she said. We kept walking. I kept telling myself it was the psilocybin. That last trailing edge of it making the water look like it had intentions. That was the thing about psychedelics. They didn't always leave cleanly. Sometimes they left a residue, a slight wrongness around the edges of the things that took a while to fully resolve. I almost believed that. The suited man from the cafe drifted back through my thoughts uninvited. Those black lenses that hadn't seemed like lenses. The homeless man in the park with his too wide smile and his dark irises. Erica coming back from the bathroom quieter than she'd gone in, reading her phone with an expression I hadn't been able to name. The shape in the water. I was connecting things that didn't connect. That was the paranoia talking, the come down, the unfamiliar city, and the unfamiliar darkness, and the fire on the water doing things with my head. I was fine. We were fine. It was my birthday, and Providence was weird, and I was fine with that. I was working really hard to be fine. Oh, Erica said, brightening beside me. I'm getting a Dell's. You want one? The Dell's cart was just ahead, a small, warm island of normalcy in this flickering dark. Yeah, I said, grateful for something concrete to look at. A regular lemon. Watermelon for me. She trotted ahead towards the cart, and I turned back to the river, hands in my pockets, watching the fire on the water. And something looked back. Just at the surface, two dark shapes breaking the black water, catching the firelight. Not reflecting it exactly, just catching it the way eyes do. They were fixed on me with a stillness that the current around them couldn't disturb. And whatever was behind them knew me in a way that stopped my breathing completely. Not recognition. Something older than recognition. I couldn't move. I couldn't look away. A cup of yellow frozen lemonade entered my entire field of vision. I got watermelon and you regular lemon, Erica said. Hey, you okay? The cup was between me and the water. I took it, and I looked back at the river. Nothing. Just fire on black water, breaking and reforming, and never settling. Yeah, I said. Just getting waves from the mushrooms still, I guess. I took a long sip of the frozen lemonade and did not look at the water again. Erica, do you ever think about the soul of a city? What makes a place like this tick? She looked at me, and then out at the water, the fires, the old buildings, and the riverbank. What do you mean? I gestured at all of it. All the history. Providence was built on fire and water, basically. The rivers are the lifeblood of this whole area. Trading ships coming from the harbor. The Gaspee was burned right out there in the bay, over a year before the Boston Tea Party. One of the first real acts of revolution against the British. It's all still here. You can feel it. What if a city like this has a spirit of its own, some kind of consciousness that comes from everything that's happened to it? Erica was quiet for a moment in a way that meant she was actually thinking about it rather than just waiting to respond. You know, most people assume ancient cultures had these vast pantheons, gods for everything, hundreds of them, but that's mostly a Roman and Greek thing that was projected backwards onto everything else. Most pagan cultures were much more local than that. Regional spirits, deities tied to a specific river, a specific hill or mound, a specific people. She paused and glanced at me. You actually want to hear this, or are you just humoring me? Erica, everything you say is considerably more interesting because you're pretty. She looked at me for a moment with something I couldn't quite name. Something that wasn't quite an eye roll I was expecting. It passed quickly. Scott, I'm listening. Local gods, specific to a place. Right. And some of them traveled with their people when they migrated. Carried with them, basically. But some of them didn't. Some of them stayed tied to the land or the water, waiting. She paused, looking out at the river. Waiting for their people to come back, or for new ones to arrive. I slurped the last of my Dells and turned that over. So what does that mean for somewhere like Providence? Everyone who built the city came from somewhere else. Though I suppose they did bring their god with them. Christianity came to the New World with the colonists. Erica looked at me with something quiet behind her eyes. Right. And if one god can travel with its faithful, so can another. The music shifted into something lower and slower over the water. Neither of us said anything for a moment. Somewhere beneath the nearest brazier, something broke the surface and was gone. So, does that give any credence to the Wiccans who say their grandmothers handed down an unbroken chain of continuous secret practice or a romanticized history of utopian paganism? No. No offense to the Wiccans, I said. Some offense to the Wiccans, Erica replied, and the moment passed. Erica's smile faded. She looked at me for a moment with that careful expression she got when she was choosing every word before she said it. Scott, there's something else I need to show you. The rest of your birthday present. I already got some more information. She turned and started walking away from the crowds and the fire, towards the bay, and I fell into step beside her.